I love how the media takes a few critics when the overwhelming response from the American people is support for what this administration is doing. There should be no secret about the fact that this administration is committed to cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. The president campaigned on that promise. Americans elected him on that promise, and he's actually delivering on it. If you look at the public polling, 70% of Americans, according to CBS, believe that President Trump is delivering on the promises he made.
Tariffs are tax cuts. That's what Karoline Leavitt claimed with a straight face. But here's the kicker. Every economist on Earth, even Trump's own advisors, say that's total nonsense. So why is the White House still selling this fairy tale? Imagine someone telling you that eating donuts every day will help you lose weight. You'd probably laugh and walk away, right? Well, that's essentially what Karoline Leavitt wants you to believe when she says tariffs are tax cuts for Americans. It's a claim so wild, it sounds like it belongs in the plot of a bad satire movie.
The fact that you just got done engaging in a conversation where we have a president of the United States who has no idea about the oath that he just took on January 20th tells me everything that I need to know. You know, the thing that actually derived from the oath that he was supposed to take. And he supposedly took an oath, which there's a lot of people that point out that he never put his hand on the Bible. He didn't even have good sense enough in that same interview to say something as simple as, yes, I will follow the Constitution.
But no, this is real life, and it was pushed repeatedly by Donald Trump's administration as though it made any shred of sense. Let's break it down. Tariffs, by definition, are taxes imposed on imported goods. The government adds a fee or tax to products made overseas when they come into the country. Straightforward so far, right? But here's the thing. While political spin makes it sound like these taxes only hurt foreign companies, that's not even close to the full story. Those extra costs don't just disappear into the air. They get passed down the line until they hit the end of the chain. You, the consumer. That's Economics 101, except apparently nobody told Leavitt, or maybe she just doesn't care. During her rounds defending Trump's trade war policies, Leavitt claimed tariffs were equivalent to tax cuts for the American people. This, despite the fact that economists, even ones who worked for Trump himself, have said repeatedly that tariffs are taxes, not a tax cut, just a tax. The Nonpartisan Tax Foundation literally called Trump's tariff policies tax increases by another name. But you wouldn't know that listening to Leavitt because, shock, facts aren't as fashionable as talking points. And let's talk examples.
Why is the media so against cutting waste, fraud, and abuse from the government? I don't get it.
I just want to ask a question.
We won't be deterred. We will not be deterred from people like you and the press who are clearly adamantly opposed to cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. But this administration is committed to finding even more of that fraud, waste, and abuse.
To be clear, that $71 billion was from 2015 to 2022, so it wasn't in just 1 year. And it was
$71 billion.
But it wasn't.
Crazy DEI programs in countries overseas. They also don't like the fact that there has been $71 billion worth of fraud in Social Security and improper payments going out the door.
In 2018, Trump levied tariffs on imported washing machines. What happened next? The price of washing machines in the US shot up almost 12%. Suddenly, customers were shelling out more for basic appliances, not because they'd improved somehow, but because of this so-called tax cut. It didn't stop there. Tariffs on products like bicycles and steel led to similar price hikes, with some goods seeing upticks of over 25%, all while wages for regular Americans stayed mostly stagnant. It's like you're playing a rigged claw machine at an arcade, except instead of being out $5, you're losing chunks of your paycheck every time you shop. There's also the impact on farmers. Remember how Trump bragged about his trade war with China? It turns out China didn't just sit back and take the hit. They retaliated by slapping tariffs on US agricultural products, which tanked demand for American crops like soybeans. Farmers were left scrambling to make ends meet, and the federal government had to cough up $28 billion in bailout payments to keep them afloat. That's billion with a B. Let's pause here. Trump called the bailouts patriotic at one point, but why were they necessary to begin with? Oh yeah, because of the economic mess his tariffs created. Studies have also laid out the financial damage this policy caused to consumers. According to researchers, Trump's tariffs led to price increases on affected goods, ranging anywhere from 10% to 25%, directly hitting families' wallets. It's no wonder economists across the spectrum criticize the idea. Even former officials from Trump's own administration, like Gary Cohn, admitted there's no real way to spin tariffs as anything beneficial for regular people. So when you hear Leavitt trying to reframe these taxes as savings, keep in mind, it's not just bad economics, it's insulting. Yet the Trump administration sold tariffs as a win.
So President Trump referenced the notion you're the future of the Democratic Party. You are pitching fellow Democrats on a run for the top position on the House Oversight Committee.
Yeah.
The current top Democrat is stepping down.
As you were just talking about Newark, or what's going on as it relates to our food, or what's going on as it relates to these firings and how that is impacting, say, our veterans. I don't know that I'm the future of the Democratic Party, but I do know that in this moment we need people that are unafraid and willing to go after this administration for the good of the entirety of the country.
They wanted Americans to believe these policies were making the country stronger, protecting manufacturing jobs, and keeping foreign companies in check. In reality, it was a shell game. Sure, tariffs might have created short-term advantages for some industries, but the costs got shifted to shoppers in the process. And let's not ignore the ripple effect. Small businesses that relied on imports had to jack up prices or cut corners. For them, this wasn't some theoretical debate. It meant real consequences like fewer customers and slimmer margins. But hey, at least politicians got a nice soundbite out of it, right? Here's the bottom line. Tariffs act like an invisible tax that shows up in the cost of everyday items. And while ordinary Americans might not see that tax line itemized on a receipt, they feel it in their grocery bills, utility payments, and credit card statements. It's regressive, meaning it hits low and middle-income families the hardest. So for Leavitt to call this a tax cut is not just wrong, it's backwards. It's like calling fire extinguishers fuel. At best, it's ignorant. At worst, it's deliberately deceptive. But here's where things get interesting. Jasmine Crockett, one of Trump's fiercest critics when it comes to economic policies, didn't let this nonsense slide. In fact, she addressed this outright nonsense in a way that left no room for spin or deflection. Crockett didn't yell or throw insults. She just brought the receipts, studies, data, and real-world outcomes that contradicted every point Leavitt tried to make. That part? Oh, we're getting to that next. Stay tuned. If you've ever wanted to see someone calmly unravel an argument so thoroughly that the whole room pauses to process what they just heard, Jasmine Crockett delivered that moment. The setting was a panel discussion where Karoline Leavitt doubled down on what looked like a rehearsed talking point, that tariffs are somehow tax cuts for Americans. Bold claim, right? Crockett wasn't buying it though. Without raising her voice or breaking a sweat, she looked Leavitt in the eye and started with this line. When you claim tariffs are tax cuts, you're either lying to Americans or don't understand basic economics. Just like that, the air in the room shifted. What followed was part fact check, part economics lesson, and all takedown. Crockett didn't stop at the opening jab. She went straight to the receipts. First, she cited the Tax Foundation, a nonpartisan group that has repeatedly pointed out how tariffs work as taxes on imported goods. Crockett explained, in clear and simple terms, that tariffs directly raise the prices of consumer goods, which means that Americans, everyday shoppers at grocery stores, hardware shops, and online stores, end up footing the bill. This isn't debate club theory, it's reality, and Crockett painted it with vivid examples. She reminded the room of studies that showed specific price increases during the Trump tariff era. Washing machines were one of the most clear-cut examples. Prices went up nearly 12% after the tariffs on imported models kicked in. That's not spin or partisan rhetoric, that's a documented fact. Crockett then brought in broader economic data. Remember Trump's grand trade war? Crockett highlighted how the immediate reaction from financial markets wasn't exactly a standing ovation. In fact, the stock market saw sharp declines in response to the tariff announcements, which hurt investor confidence and signaled trouble ahead for American businesses relying on foreign goods or materials. Crockett didn't need to embellish it because the numbers made her point for her. She also mentioned something most politicians seem to ignore. Trump's own advisors couldn't get behind this rhetoric. Gary Cohn, Trump's former director of the National Economic Council, openly admitted tariffs were paid by Americans. Talk about awkward when your own economic team won't back up the slogan you've been selling. But Crockett wasn't done yet. She touched on the ripple effects of tariffs in ways that hit even harder. Farmers, for instance, were caught in the crossfire when China slapped retaliatory tariffs on U.S. agricultural exports. Suddenly, American soybeans and other crops were less appealing to foreign buyers. Farmers were forced to take huge losses, and the government had to swoop in with a $28 billion bailout package just to keep them above water. Crockett used this as a brutal counterpoint to Leavitt's claim. If tariffs were truly a win for Americans, why did farmers need a multi-billion-dollar rescue operation just to survive? The silence in the room was the only response. It didn't take long for the panel, and likely anyone watching at home, to realize that Crockett wasn't engaging in political spin. She was just laying out the truth with data, examples, and logic. While Leavitt sat quietly, likely trying to think of a comeback, the room absorbed what Crockett said. And speaking of reactions, let's talk about Leavitt's for a second. As Crockett went through her points, you could almost see Leavitt's thought process flashing across her face. First, a flicker of surprise. Maybe she wasn't expecting a pushback this sharp. Then a quick dart to confusion, followed by a little anger simmering beneath the surface. By the time Crockett finished, Leavitt had settled on a forced smile, clearly fumbling for a way to save face. Spoiler alert, she didn't. But it wasn't just the panel attendees noticing what Crockett did. Outside the room, her words started to trend. Even economists, people who usually avoid wading into public debates unless absolutely necessary, jumped into the conversation. Take former Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers, for example. He posted a video clip of Crockett's takedown with the simple caption, "Finally, someone said it." That's high praise for a moment where clarity and facts, not volume or insults, carried the day. The viral moment became a flashpoint in the broader discourse about economic policies over the past few years. Let's not sugarcoat it. Tariffs have been one of Trump's most controversial policies. Supporters call them a tool for economic nationalism, while critics, like Crockett, argue they're essentially a way to make consumers and small businesses pay for larger political goals. Crockett didn't shy away from that debate. The brilliance of her approach was that she treated Americans like adults who deserve honest answers, not catchphrases. Crockett's rise from that moment wasn't just about the attention she received on social media, or the headlines celebrating her performance. It was about what it represented, a demand for honesty in a time when oversimplified messages dominate the political landscape. Her words reminded people that leadership should, at the very least, involve pretending you've done your homework. At its core, the exchange between Crockett and Leavitt encapsulated something bigger than just tariffs. It was about critical thinking and holding people accountable, no matter how much spin is thrown in the mix. If Crockett's viral moment teaches us anything, it's that some political arguments collapse under the weight of basic math and common sense. By the time Crockett finished speaking, it wasn't just silence. It was the sound of a myth being shattered. And with that, Crockett led the conversation away from political fairy tales and into reality. Tariffs aren't tax cuts. They're taxes on you, the consumer. Every time you shop and notice higher prices on everyday items like groceries or appliances, that's the truth staring back at you. Politicians can say whatever they want, but your grocery bill doesn't spin numbers. So who actually benefits from the lie? Not you. Probably not small businesses either. Big corporations and political campaigns, though, they're doing just fine. Here's the takeaway. Don't let slick slogans replace actual facts. Fact-check claims, follow the money, and demand the truth. Prices may rise, but they'll always expose what politicians don't want you to see.